Just because you were misclassified or disenfranchised doesn't mean you just get together and boom. I'm just sharing these thoughts to the other tribal nations out there to ask you all, what are you doing? Because if your whole purpose of being an Indian tribe is to try to get money from the federal government, well, maybe you deserve to be right where you're at. If your purpose of being an Indian tribe is to maintain and promote your culture, your heritage, to pass it on to your future generations, to steward your lands, all of the things that Indian tribes are supposed to be doing and claim to be wanting to do, well, then your sovereignty is there, but you have to exercise it. No one can exercise a sovereign's rights but that sovereign. This is also, hope, a lesson to a lot of the folks out there who have been misclassified, that just because you were misclassified or disenfranchised doesn't mean you just get together and boom. A lot of us who have been in the indigenous diaspora, removed from our homes and things of that nature, you may be just learning, but that doesn't give you the right to want to pop up and take the place of those that have been conducting themselves in this manner. Everyone went through something. If you're an Indian, you went through something in this United States of America. You did. You're dealing with it now. Your ancestors were dealing with it. But the manner is, there are certain tribes that have maintained, despite everything they've been going through, that they are who they are and have continued to function as such. I want to talk a little bit about the Center for Indigenous Peoples' Rights, which was founded by Dr. Palermo and I, Amaguatu, because we understood that once you get past the historic, cultural fight, even the physical battles that go on, and that's what Pocanoket was and Camp Metacom, there's legal battles that need to be fought as well. Because in my opinion, and in FANA's opinion, that's kind of the last frontier for indigenous rights, understanding the law and how it applies. And, we often hear this language, the white man's law, and that's the white. No, it's the law. And the law is the law, regardless of who, what, when, where, or why. The law is the law. And it's so important that indigenous tribes in particular understand the law and how it applies to them, because our ignorance of the law is the greatest tool that is used against us to undermine our inherent sovereignty. So as you look at what's going on with the Pocanoket, I'm hoping that it encourages other Indian tribes to start to move forward. And the Center for Indigenous Peoples' Rights is definitely an entity that can assist with that. But once again, you need to be meeting those standards. I've said this in the past, new tribes aren't going to cut it because you're not going to meet that. Oh, and the other element is continuity. You've continued to conduct yourself as an Indian tribe. So ethnicity, territoriality, continuity, governing yourself as an Indian tribe, acknowledgement by the powers that be, whether it be the state, municipal, all of those sorts of engagements, and then other tribes. And this is why for a lot of the folks who are coming back together, the notion that you're just going to form your tribe and move forward it's not going to cut it, because if other Indian tribes don't know you, then you're not going to be considered an Indian tribe. An Indian is one who is acknowledged by other Indians as being an Indian. So you can have your history, you can have your heritage, you can know your bloodlines, you can know your genealogy, but if you're not connected with the community, if nobody knows you, then you're not going anywhere. There's this very big issue with colonization that we've all started to focus on. Our individuality is the most important thing. And that works under U.S. law and the system that they created, because the history was individuals coming from monarchies and other places where they didn't have an opportunity to advance, coming over to quote unquote America because it gave them a chance to start anew, start fresh. This is where the whole new identities of racial classifications like white, black, all that comes from people who a large part are European in heritage, coming over here and saying, well, we don't want to be in that anymore. We want to be something new where we can do something new for ourselves. And that's good for them. But when it comes to the indigenous side of things, it's not about the individual, it's about the collective. That's what the tribe is. And no individuals are going to be able to exercise sovereignty. Individuals are not sovereign in that regard. Individuals are protected by a sovereign, are a part of a sovereign, and that is the Indian tribe. And then, we spoke in the past about the different levels of that. So you have yourself, and then your family is the next level, and then your clan is the next level. And then the clans make up the tribes, and the tribes make up the nations. But it's not going to be an individual thing. Oh, well, I'm the descendant of Powhatan. I'm the descendant of whoever, so this is mine. No, that's not how it works. And an Indian tribe is about the culture. It's about the coming together. It's about the ceremonies, the traditions, the practices that you keep alive. It's about walking in two worlds, being in this U.S. system, but still maintaining those lessons that were passed on. My uncle Chief Sunset, great chief within the Narragansett Nation, he would say that he was an Indian of today, a modern man who forgets not the faith of his forefathers. And that's really what this is all about, moving and conducting ourselves in that manner. In a space where we say, despite the colonization, despite the attempted genocide, despite the misclassification, despite the imposition of U.S. citizenship on us, we still are who we are. Never change. Doesn't matter what you look like. This notion that somehow if you have intermixed with someone else, you're now no longer who your ancestors were. It's just all madness and nonsense. And we need to get by it, past it. We need to move beyond it. And we need to be decolonized. Decolonizing, it's a process, but you should get to a point where you're not colonized anymore in terms of up here and in here, and in your mind and your spirit. And if your mind and your spirit are no longer colonized, then the rest will flow forward from that. But a lot of us, even though we're saying decolonization, and even though we're saying that we know what happened to us and we are who we are, we're still colonized up here and in here, because we're still thinking in this individual thing. Everyone wants to be the big chief. Everyone wants to be the number one. Everyone wants to, be the one to get all of the shine. And that's not how it works. I'll speak specifically to Mashapag. The council appointed me to be the Chippewa sachem, but I represent the council. I am not who I am without the council and their approval and their support. And all of the council are representatives of the different clans that make up the tribe. And then those clans are made up by the different families who appoint who their Atusko sachem or council chief is going to be. So there's a governance structure there, but it's based in the collective, not the individual. The individual is not going to get you anywhere except within this U.S. system where you can be who you are, your authentic self, all of that rhetoric, and then advance in the U.S. system. But when you come out of that into traditional tribal governance structure, that ain't going to cut it, because your individual is as valuable as what you're contributing to the collective. And with the FANA nations, we're all first contact nations that meet those federal common law standards. And we are working together because we understand that we're all dealing with similar circumstances, and that, as FANA's motto is, there's strength through unity. So when you look at what the Pocanokets have been able to accomplish, understand that it was accomplished because there was support from other nations that were there to support them in their fight. And none of us were like, well, why should the Pocanokets have it? We should know. The Pocanokets should be the focus right now, and let's direct our energies and support into making sure they get to where they need to get. And now, I see what Creator's doing, because even the conversations, the engagements that are being had within the past week since this information was made public, and the transfer was made, it's different now. It's different now. The looks of federal recognition and you're not federally recognized, those aren't really valid conversations anymore. And this is from Brown University, a Ivy League institution. So when you're talking about power, and once again, they engaged with the Pocanokets because the Pocanokets are who they are. And it came to a point where there was no more denying that. But it would not have happened if the Pocanokets did not advance their inherent sovereignty as an Indian tribe. So for those tribal tribes out there, tribal nations that are out there, you are inherently who you are. Stop begging for a colonial government to tell you who you already know you are, but then stop shying away from quote unquote the white man's law, because that's the only way you're going to get anywhere, by understanding how that impacts you and your rights and being able to navigate it appropriately. We started the Federation to be a space for tribes who meet those standards to be able to come together collectively. For any tribal nations who might be inquiring, there is a process if you're looking to be a member nation of FANA. And first of all, you have to be sponsored by one of the current FANA nations. So that means, once again, having relationships, because we're not just going to sponsor a nation that we don't know anything about or haven't heard anything about. That doesn't make any sense. If you don't know your culture and your heritage, what do we look like inviting you in to be a part of chiefs whose bloodlines go back to the 1600s? Not from our perspective. But it was created there so that those tribes who do meet that and who are governing themselves correctly and who have been engaged in their culture and their heritage and who have been building in the spaces where they're at can have a confederation to connect with and to build with other tribes and tribal nations that are going through similar circumstances, but are now making headway in terms of how you address these issues that have been affecting our peoples. So FANA, and I hope that for all the naysayers out there, this puts a zipper on your lips, button up your lip. We don't want to hear it. The proof is in the pudding. We've continued to demonstrate since FANA was chartered in 2015 that we understand things and we're moving on them. And we don't want to hear, once again, about all of the reasons why we can't. We don't want to hear that we don't look the way you think we should. We don't want to hear that we're not federally recognized, so therefore we can't. We don't want to hear any of it. We don't want to hear any of it. We're about action. We're about progressing for our people. We're about moving things forward. And Creator is blessing us because we have stopped with this nonsense, this victimization mentality, and we've started to conduct ourselves as who we truly are, sovereign Indian tribes with ancestral ties to these lands that they now call the U.S. and the Americas. So, for tribal nations that are out there, please, if you are meeting these criteria and those standards, you can check the FANA website to see the actual criteria that we have. As I mentioned, the intake process starts with being sponsored by a tribe. Then it's demonstrating your historical and genealogical ties that prove who you are. Then it's about a 6 to 9 month vetting process. We don't just say, okay, you're in. We need to get to know you. I will share this. One of the really exciting elements is Bibi Naniki Reyes Orocovis from the Borica Nation, who you all are going to know as the Taino peoples out of Puerto Rico. Her tribe was just brought on board as a FANA member nation. So we're getting right back to the original first contact nations coming together to rebuild the relationships that we had before colonization. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of, and it's a beautiful thing to be engaged with, and it's a beautiful thing to be seeing, because so many people never thought that the things that we're doing right now could happen. And I'm really excited because the Pocanoket Peace Treaty with the Pilgrims was signed in 1621. 400 years went by this past 2021 from that first peace treaty. We did the action in 2017, so 7 years after the action, 3 years after the 400-year anniversary of the peace treaty signing, the Pocanokets have their land back, and they'll be able to have the quote-unquote Thanksgiving on their lands this year. That is profound. That is impactful. That is a blessing, and that should be motivation to other tribes out there to stop with the whining and the complaining and the infighting and all of this madness that keeps tribal nations from moving forward, and to step into your inherent sovereignty, to exercise your rights, to be the tribes and the nations that you are. And if and when you do that, clearly now there is a path to move forward. So if not for yourselves, for your future generations, do it. Conduct yourselves accordingly. Conduct yourselves with dignity. Conduct yourselves with respect. Conduct yourselves with honor. And if and when you decide to do that, trust that Creator is going to make a way and make a path. All praise to Creator for his blessings. All praise to Creator for his fighting for us, because we only did our part. There are other elements that simply we had no control over, but he's in control of all. And he understands and he sees, and his time is not our time. But all we need to do is be prepared for when it is his time to be able to move in the path that he has laid out for us. So just want to share those remarks. Hadn't been on for a while. Congratulations to the Pocanoket family, to the Sagamore Winds of Thunder, and to Sachem Dancing Star. So honored and pleased to have been a part of this. Katapatush for allowing the Federation to be of support to you. And definitely looking forward as Director General to advancing some of the rights of the other FANA nations, and hoping that FANA continues to be an example to tribes out there that there is a way forward, but you have to be conducting yourself accordingly to get there. As always, Katapatush Wujia Chututa, thank you very much for listening, and Pish Kanash. Until the next time that we connect, I hope you all are doing well, and happy traditional Thanksgiving to those who celebrate. I hope. Tawamagascata Squampson, Nisu Wishuwanag, Director General of the Federation of Aboriginal Nations of the Americas. I hope that this video finds you all well and in good spirits and blessed by the great Creator. I'm assuming that most of you have heard. If not, I will post links down low to the Boston Globe article and to the piece that Brown University put out. The lands are officially back to the Pocanoket Tribe. We are both ecstatic and very appreciative to the Creator for all of his blessings and guidance. As I think you know, back in 2017, we did an action to repatriate the lands of Pocanoket in support of the Pocanoket Tribe, which are the lands of the Massasoit, where the seat of the Massasoit is, who was the great leader of the Pocanoket Tribe of the Pocanoket Nation in the 1600s. We did that because the Pocanokets had never relinquished those claims to those lands. They had just been taken during colonization period and then passed on from hand to hand. So I don't want to go too much back in detail in that. You can check past videos that we posted relating to that. But last week, the official transfer was made, facilitated by Dr. Taino Fire River Palermo, Esquire, legal director for the Center for Indigenous Peoples' Rights, and also a chief of the Federation as well. And I just want to share that, I hope that this is motivation and proof positive to tribal nations that are out there that federal recognition isn't like the bottom line. Federal recognition doesn't make you an Indian tribe. It's a relationship that an Indian tribe can form with the federal government to provide access to resources and supports that other tribes who aren't federally recognized can't necessarily access. But it doesn't mean that you're an Indian tribe. It just means that you can get access to certain funds if you have that certain relationship with the United States federal government. For the tribes that are not federally recognized, there is a concept of federal common law Indian tribe, because federal recognition started in the late 70s, early 80s, 1970s, 1980s. But the question that we have always posed is, well, what were Indian tribes before federal recognition was instituted? And there's been a really good job of framing things in a manner where Indian tribes start chasing after the federal government for approval of who they already are. Sovereignty as a concept is inherent. As an Indian tribe, you have inherent sovereignty. The question is, how are you exercising that sovereignty? And most Indian tribes aren't exercising their sovereignty. They're talking about everything that happened to them, everything that they can't do, everything that they wish they could do, but they can't, how they're not allowed, how they're not being permitted to. All of this madness that is not reflective of being an Indian tribe. And it's not reflective of sovereignty. A sovereign doesn't beg another sovereign to acknowledge them for who they are. Now, there are standards to this federal common law principle. It's ethnicity. You have to actually be the Indian tribe. So it's not a group of people who just get together and say, oh, we're going to be this. There's territoriality. You have to be associated with particular lands. That's why the madness that we see, well, we're from all of these lands doesn't work. No one's from everywhere. You have to be functioning as an Indian tribe and hold yourself out as an Indian tribe. And you also have to be acknowledged by the powers that be, others around, as being an Indian tribe, and by other Indian tribes as being an Indian tribe. So there is a standard to it. Not anyone can just pop up and be like, oh, this is us, give us our land, or give us land. But if you're an Indian tribe, you're an Indian tribe. And you shouldn't be an Indian tribe only because you think you're going to get something. The member nations of FANA have been conducting themselves as Indian tribes without federal recognition. And you can see now is proof positive that what we've been saying is correct. By law, by culture, by history, by whatever standard you want to utilize, an Indian tribe is an Indian tribe. So I'm just sharing these thoughts to the other tribal nations out there to ask you all, what are you doing? Because if your whole purpose of being an Indian tribe is to try to get money from the federal government, well, maybe you deserve to be right where you're at. If your purpose of being an Indian tribe is to maintain and promote your culture, your heritage, to pass it on to your future generations, to steward your lands, all of the things that Indian tribes are supposed to be doing and claim to be wanting to do, well, then your sovereignty is there, but you have to exercise it. No one can exercise a sovereign's rights but that sovereign. This